sink in the floating arms, forming a circle like universal pulse, coming to center, counterbalance, touching the toe, eccentric hydraulics, root, waist, turn into the push, come up to the transition, to the center, stepping out with a heel, light heel, sink into single whip, coming through the center overhead. Welcome back to another video presentation on Guang Ping Tai Chi. Today we're going to investigate how basic martial arts principles, Gongfu principles, can be applied to your Dalu, your fixed form. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first 5 moves of Golden Ying's original Guang Ping form, and I'm going to show you how I apply these basics to my understanding, my performance of the Dalu. Now, you may do the performance differently, whether you come down from a different lineage, your moves might be a little bit different, but you can still apply these principles. And one of the things I try to teach is that within your own development of your fixed form, your Dalu, for myself, I'm always thinking about these general good Kung Fu principles of like coming through the center, counterbalance and all that. And how they apply and how I use them, and I try to stick to that. And this is more conceptual learning than it is rote learning, and we'll get into that in another video talking about rote learning versus conceptual. But for our purposes today, I'll do the Dalu, the fixed form, the first 4 or 5 moves or 6 moves, and then I'm going to go back and show you how each of these quickly show you how each of these principles apply. I don't want to go too deeply into each of these principles because it would take a long video. I'm just going to do a very short presentation of this to kind of tickle your mind about it. Okay. What I'll do is I'll do the Dalu as I normally like to do it, and then I'll do it more quote unquote robotically or bones, so that you can see the breakdown of the structure, so you can be more evident of how the basics are applied. So now we'll do the presentation in more kind of like bones or robotic. In robotic, I mean the steps will be broken down more angular so you can kind of see. The first thing you do is the syncing, of course. With all good presentations, before you do your presentation, there's the gathering of the energy, the inner force, the chi, your attention. So before you do any presentation, kind of gathering yourself. So that moment before you do the presentation. Okay, so the second principle is the sinking and floating arms. So it's like in the Qigong, in this exercise here, where you sink down, let your arms float up, and then press down like that. So this principle is of, instead of using muscular force to lift your arms up, as you're sinking down, your arms float up. And this is a principle that runs through many, many styles of Gongfu. So again, as I sink, arms float up. Attention, sink, arms float up. Those are the first few movements. Heel goes out. My balance is tuck the butt in. That's another principle that Sifu really emphasized, having the hips tucked in. So again, as you sink down, make sure your back is flat, attention, and arms float out to the sides. So that's the first principle. Attention. The second principle will be the sinking and the floating of the arms. As I form the circle with my arms and the heel goes out, there's no weight put on the heel. This third principle, stay centered and don't put your weight out on that moving foot until you can transition onto it. So with your root. So again, attention, sink, arms float, form a circle. And again, this posture looks like universal pose. I have to interrupt because my donkey's about to get in the picture. Go on, get, go, 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 go. He always likes to get in the filming and kind of presents a problem, but it's something I like living with. So again, the sinking, arms raising, forming circle. And again, this posture here is like the universal pose, and the floating arms, I mean, it's like when you're doing the universal pose, it's more than muscular force that you're using to hold your arms up, using your internal chi to make that so your arms light, right? So again, this all is happening at the very beginning of the salutation. Attention, sinking down, floating arms, and forming the circle. So we come to the center and then reach out for grasp birth tail. Now this is a very important concept because coming through the center is very important rather than just going from here out directly, because again, from coming through the center is where you can do the change. That's what I always say. Center is where you can change, and if you were doing more like improvised Tai Chi or Gongfu, the center becomes your home because you can come through. And so I always, whenever I'm doing my developing my fixed form, my forms, my dalu or whatever, any of my Gongfu, coming through the center is a very important principle to me. So again, attention, seeking, floating the arms, the light heel, and then coming in through the center. As I reach out with a toe, again, there's no weight on that toe. I try to imagine that there's a cliff behind me. As I showed you in an earlier Tai Chi video, I would have my students do walks for repulsed monkey, imagining that there might be a cliff behind them. So again, you're kind of feeling with that toe before you even commit to transitioning down, okay? And this posture here, this is the concept of counterbalance. So in order to extend that foot out by having your arms out, you're balanced. And again, another principle is in order to have your foot go out further, you can drop down more. You don't step back more, you drop down more so that you can extend in that counterbalance. So right off, just in doing like 2 or 3 of the moves, we've already used up 5 principles. So you can see how important these principles are as they run through your fixed form, your dalu. So again, attention, sinking down, floating arms, light heel, forming a circle, universal pose, coming through the center, the idea of counterbalance. Now on this portion of grasp bird's tail, I like to call this, I kind of made this term up, by eccentric hydraulics. And eccentric is like when you're lifting weights, the negative force. So it's like you lift up and then kind of slowly let down. Kind of like, and I like the idea of hydraulic because I can imagine a hydraulic jack kind of slowly being let down. So instead of physically guiding my hands in this direction, all I'm doing is releasing the energy so they kind of float down by themselves, just as you would do, release the air in hydraulic jack and it kind of goes down. So I call this eccentric hydraulics. Okay. From here, now I've transferred the weight back to my foot, again, stepping out, again, lowering down so you can step out, and then the root, the bow, the horse, before you do the press. A lot of times I see people stepping like this, and it seems like they've already exuded the power before they even finish the root. So what I like to do is step into the horse, sit down in the horse, use the waist rotation for the power. Another thing I like to express is a lot of times when I'm watching people do their form on YouTube or videos, is that they don't take the time to finish the move. It's all too flowing, so it kind of looks mushy to me anyway, and it looks kind of like this. It looks flowing, and a lot of times I think people are trying to express the flow. But to me, in my application of my understanding, I like to finish every move till it's completed. And then if there's a slight pause before I move on to the next one. So from here, we're going to step up. Again, that principle coming through the center. And this is a transition here. And again from here. And when we go into single whip, the next principle I'm using is to use going through the center for the arm rotation out. And again, in the video where I did a whole presentation on single whip, we talked about how in single-handed Puisho, pushing hands, you coming through that center, you're rotating for the power. So again, from this transition place, again, we talked about having the relaxed hand come through the center. Again, this one more principle that I'd like to talk about here is, especially it comes from the Shaolin on the double punches and the long fist. Instead of like thinking about holding your arms up, because like if you do your single whip, you're going to have to kind of judge, whether your arms are level or not. One way to get your arms level is to kind of extend out, right? Like extending a chalk line. When you pull on a chalk line, the string automatically goes level. So again, from here, and again from here, as I step out, the more I want to step out, the lower I go. There's very little weight in that foot out there. So here, and then talked about this, the sink, finishing that sink. This is the crucial part of single whip. Okay, so we do it one more time from the beginning again. So as you do it, think about the principles that I'm describing. Attention, sinking down, arms floating up, forming the circle like universal pulse. Coming through the center, counterbalance, eccentric hydraulics, root, and then the push. Stepping up, the transition. You see, notice there's almost no weight on this foot. Kind of extending, relax the hand, looking in that direction, attention, where you fix your attention. Stepping out, no weight. Sink, and then the final sink, push. From here, I do a little pivot so that I have opening, and again, this hand is going to come through the center in a straight line. Doesn't come out here, comes overhead. Why does it come overhead? Because my understanding of it is coming down with a force here. Stroke crew's wings. Could be like a china, down like this, or it could be like a chop, right? If I see people doing this, well, it might be okay. Looks like a patsal, a block, but it's definitely not coming down with the downforce. So again, my presentation, the way I see it, I'm pivoting, and I like to come down through the center. Whenever possible, I'll always like to go through the center, because again, the center is where change can happen. So after single whip, here. Here's next move, stork whose wings to the right. If you look carefully, what I'm doing is from before I move the foot to the right, I'm kind of coming through the center again with my hand. I don't go straight out like this, so that I can have more force coming this way. And then this foot, also this foot here, comes through the center for the transition. So it's not just like stepping out like that, where to me, it's a little bit dead, but I like to have, so in all movement, there's like what I like to call pre-power. Pre-power means that moment where you can kind of like feel like you're winding up, like a baseball pitcher would wind up. And so that pre-power goes from here, you can almost feel it, like that. So that's how I like to express stork whose wings, coming straight overhead, and then like that. So my elbow is going out like this. So we talked about brush knee twist step, and coming to the center, and then transitioning back. Hands come through the center, and then to the other side. Again, I'll do a little more here. Stork whose wings, brush knee twist step, transition back through the center, touch. So we end up on this side. Then we do parry and punch. So in parry and punch, again, watching lots of presentations of other people, I see a lot of this kind of movement where fist comes back and punches straight out. So it's almost like a stopping action. Another Gongfu principle that I like to apply is called the continuous circle, like a figure eight. And so you want to change direction, use like the circle to change direction rather than just stopping and punching. So we break down parry and punch from brush knee twist step. The left hand goes forward to parry, which is deflect, right? And the right hand is coming back, getting ready for the punch. But at this point, when I'm doing the parry, I'm still pretty much facing forward until I sit down and rotate into the horse. So watch what your body does and what the arm does if you just coming back as you sit down into the horse. Your arm is naturally going out in this direction. So I'm just accentuating this motion of the horse right into the sit, right into the reverse direction. And then as I do the finish of the parry and punch, the fist is going forward. So again, from brush knee twist step, this hand doesn't rotate like that so much, but this hand is individually going straight forward as I'm coming with the fists and punching. So it looks like this from straight forward. There's actually a lot of actions happening at the same time. This hand has to go forward and do the parry. This hand has to come. So I'm going to do this, each hand separately for the punch. And this hand for the punch. So together they look like this. Okay, the next move is step back, prepare it close up, and then step forward into the push. And again, from parry and punch, I like to come back. I like to have these hands touching because in application, you want to build in the sensitivity in your arms to constantly touch. And in Wing Chun, you have a lot of this constant motion where you kind of practicing touching. And so from the parry and punch, rather than just separating and coming back, I like to have my hands do that sliding. And sometimes the rolling, because the rolling is deflection. So again, from here, from stepping back for the block, again, you notice that my elbows are low. Another Gongfu principle is that to block at 90 degrees to the incoming force. That way you have bigger, more coverage. If the incoming force is coming straight in, and I have too much of this high angle, the force can actually slide off that angle and hit me. So the more I have it at 90 degrees, the more I'm covering that force that goes up and down to come around. So that's more distance to go up and down. So again, from here, everything is well thought out in terms of the force. And again, some people think they have more force pushing this way, but you're actually about this area here. And again, you want to protect the rib area too. So from here, step through, step, and you notice I turn my foot at 90 degrees. So as I step through, again, that whole idea of sinking, stepping, force, and then the push. So again, let's take that from parry and punch. Come back, turn out, step through, sink, and push. Again, here, stepping through the sink and the push. The knee is out, and I'm turning from the waist. So it's not collapsing that knee forward like that. Back, turn, sit, and push. Sink and push, just like in a single whip. So that's a demonstration of how I'm using my understanding of Kung Fu basics to apply to my Guang Ping Tai Chi form. And I hope that kind of gives you some ideas and kind of prompts you to think about how you're applying your understanding of Kung Fu basics to your own form. And again, even though your form might be different, this is just a way of me presenting kind of conceptual understanding to my Kung Fu. And we'll talk about rote learning versus conceptual learning in another video. So that's it for today. Thank you.